in the alleged plot to murder Khalistani terrorist in the US, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, senior US official, led a delegation to India to discuss the alleged murder plot. White House Deputy National Security Advisor Jonathan Feiner led the US delegation to New Delhi, where he noted the formation of an investigative panel by India to probe an unsuccessful plot to kill the Khalistani terrorist on US soil. Now, the White House said in the statement that the US Deputy National Security Advisor acknowledges India's establishment of the Committee of Inquiry to investigate lethal plotting in the United States, while also noting the importance of holding accountability if anyone is found responsible for it. The visit made by Jonathan Feiner comes after the US Justice Department's indictment pointed to a murder for hire scheme targeting Pannun, which charged an Indian man for colluding with government officials to plot the murder of the Khalistani terrorist. Now, that is the background to this. In response, India expressed concern about one of its government officials being linked to the plot, from which India has disassociated itself as being against government policy. Moreover, last week, New Delhi said it would formally investigate the concerns aired by the US and take necessary follow-up action on the findings of a panel set up on the 18th of November. Now, in recent weeks, US President Joe Biden, US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, CIA Director Bill Burns and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken have reportedly discussed the issue with their Indian counterparts. The issue is highly delicate for both India and the Biden administration as they try to build closer ties in the face of a rising China, which is perceived as a threat for both democracies.
The United States and India have a complicated history. We have not always been wholly aligned. We have not always found it easy to work together as economic partners. We have not always found it easy to be on the same side of issues geopolitically. And I think in some ways the most important step forward for the United States and India is recognizing on each side that there is much more that connects us than that divides us. And that does not mean, by the way, but what we have demonstrated, I think, throughout the course of not just this administration, I will acknowledge, this is a bipartisan effort that has gone back many administrations in the United States and frankly many administrations in India to bring us to the point where not only can we seize some of the important opportunities that the world presents for us geopolitically and economically, but we can work through our differences in a constructive way without derailing that broader cooperative agenda. And that second part, in many ways, is just as important as the first.
All right, to discuss matters further, we are now being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, over the phone line. Siddhant, now it's definitely a very delicate situation. It's highly delicate for both India and the US. India and US have seen their best ties in recent years, as we've seen with the state visits that have happened. How do you see this one playing out? The two nations are, of course, India has been proactive in forming the committee to probe the matter. US has been fairly, satisfied with the kind of response they've got from India. Do you feel this having any kind of impact on India-US ties?
Well, there are multiple dimensions of India-US relationship. All have been working well. Now, we know that in January, India has extended invite for the US President Joe Biden to attend the Republic Day parade. So that is reflective of the substantive relationship. Now, of course, there are irritants as well, and both sides have their concerns. Sovereignty is a two-way street. While, of course, the US has now have filed a case, the Nikhil Gupta case involving alleged bid to kill or murder Khalistani there, who was, of course, indulging in anti-India activities. Now, of course, the U.S. has said that this is not done, and this is something that they have taken strongly. But India in the past have been raising its concerns regarding the Khalistanis getting an open space in U.S. So essentially, there are irritants, and as yesterday, the U.S. Deputy NSA talked about at a public meeting that this is a relationship that has had complicated history. There are, of course, irritants as well, but that doesn't mean that both sides cannot sit together and resolve issues. And that, of course, essentially sums up how India-US relationship is.
Siddhant, now, of course, we've been showing this Pannun, his visuals have been doing the rounds since a while. He's made several comments threatening India with all kinds of attacks. Do you feel the US has should have done more to curb these kind of actions which have, he's getting a free hand to say all these things to India on an open platform?
But essentially, US has not been seen doing anything major. We know the Indian consulate in San Francisco was attacked. Nobody knows what is the current situation when it comes to the perpetrators behind it. Now, Pannun has been given a free pass in the US, in Canada. He has been threatening Air India planes, and this is something truly shocking because if an Indian national would have done that, there would have been strong reactions from the State Department and White House. But we haven't seen those comments coming from any of the top institutions of US. And India, of course, has expressed its public concerns over the Nikhil Gupta case. So there is divergence in how countries see irritants and problems. And while the Nikhil Gupta case is something that US has been emphasizing on, talking about, and we have seen the White House statement as well, terming it as a lethal case, lethal plotting. In fact, in the US, there hasn't been any public condemnation of the comments made by Khalistani extremists in US.
Siddhant, we know that you've been tracking all the statements which have come from the Ministry of External Affairs of India, the statements that they've made regarding the case. Talk to us about the kind of approach that India is taking towards this, the mention of India's name by the US in this plot, this murder plot.
So two things have happened. First, of course, India has announced formation of a committee. That committee will come up with some kind of action against the perpetrator, and this is something that India has committed to follow up. And second, of course, the Indian side terming the entire development as concerning and pointing out that this is not Indian government's policy. So clear vocal stance by Indian government that first, this is concerning, this is something that we do not indulge in, but of course we are taking strong practical action on the ground as well in terms of formation of the committee. So that shows New Delhi's commitment. And of course, commitment by the US in terms of dealing with the Khalistani extremists who have open spaces to do action against India, which is something that India has been calling on the United States and other Western countries to take strong action on.
All right, Siddhant, we'll let you go for now. Thank you so much for joining in. Of course, we'll be tracking all the developments with you as they proceed further. That was Siddhant Sibal, our principal diplomatic correspondent, joining us over the phone line.